The cost of IT in business can be staggering. From hardware and software expenses to services like internet and phone, you don't need to spend a fortune on IT to succeed. If your organization spends more than $500 monthly on any service, or you're considering signing a long-term contract, IT Enabled can help you manage your technology and minimize your costs. Contact us today to schedule a free consultation. IT Enabled, we're here to help.
Hi, I'm Tara Watson-Watkins, President and CEO of the Lufkin, Angelina County Chamber of Commerce. Welcome to the Connect podcast, connecting business to the community. Here today with my co-host, Blake Pollino of BP Media Group.
Welcome back. This week we have our title sponsor of the podcast, IT Enabled, here on the show to share what it is that they do, how they can help small businesses in our community, and how technology is changing in the workforce.
Well, we're honored and thrilled to have our friends from IT Enabled who continue to believe in this podcast, and y'all have been our sponsors since the inception. So thank y'all for being here.
Absolutely.
Why don't you introduce yourselves to the listeners and tell a little bit about your background history?
Yeah, so my name's Zach Wilkie. I'm a senior managed service advisor over at IT Enabled. That's a really long term. Functionally, we're just senior engineers, and I've been doing technology for 10 years.
Okay.
I started in Dallas, started in college, then moved to Dallas, and I worked at a few large companies up there. And then during COVID, my family moved back to my home here in Lufkin, and I've known everybody over there for a while and got started with them just under a year ago. And
Nice.
Yeah,
so you grew up here?
I did.
Okay.
I grew up Lufkin High School, grew up in Lufkin,
Nice.
went to college in Chicago, Dallas, and came back around.
Okay.
Made a big loop, right?
Well, welcome home.
Well, my name's John Rolfe, and I have the same title as Zach, so we're senior engineers across the street here at IT Enabled, and I grew up here in Lufkin. We grew up together.
We sure did.
Going to school together, going to church together,
That's right.
canoe trips, camp, all the
We
stuff.
did it all.
We did it all. So my background, I spent most of my career in ministry and working in churches, and so I was a worship pastor for, I guess, almost 20 years before moving into technology. And so we still do a lot of stuff with churches. So my background in church has helped a lot with what we do, supporting a lot of area churches with IT. And so my background was in music. And then from music, I started working at a very large church in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. Went from Grace Bible Church over in Nacogdoches. I was there for a lot of years, leading worship for like 300 or 400 people, and then ended up in Dallas in 2007, leading worship for like 10,000 people.
Oh, wow.
So quite a big jump there. And so spent almost a decade in Dallas, and that's where my job sort of merged technology and what I was doing with worship. So got into media production and was overseeing graphic design, the video production, technology, all the stuff for a big mega church in Dallas. And so, and then in 2014, ended up moving up to Pennsylvania, a long way away from home, and worked for a multinational nonprofit ministry organization doing stuff all over the world. So I guess 5 years ago, we did a report for the organization I was working for, and we had visited 75% of the nations of the world. So It was a really big organization that I worked for, overseeing all of their media production, and IT was one of the things with that. And so that's really where I got my experience with IT. And then the pandemic hit, and was in a very lockdown state, and thought, my family and I were like, man, we really need to get back to Texas. And so some doors opened, and long story short, ended up connecting with the guys over at IT Enabled back, I guess it's been about 2 years ago, and a door opened up for me to come back home.
And you brought your whole family home.
We brought the whole family back home. So yeah, I've got a 16-year-old and 13-year-old boy, and they're loving Texas and being with grandparents.
That's right.
Yeah.
Awesome. That's great.
So,
Very cool.
yeah.
That's awesome.
So for people who may not know, if you've ever listened to this podcast before, you've definitely heard. But for anyone who may not, tell us just a little bit about what IT Enabled does.
Yeah, so what we do, we're it's a managed service provider. Essentially, it's just IT for hire. That's all it is, right? Now, what is IT? That could be a lot of things, right? It could be voice related. It could be server related. It could be a lot of nowadays cloud, a lot of security, more so every day. It could be really anything in that realm of technology, anything that deals with the technological workflow of a business, right? So sometimes we're doing workflow optimizing, working with businesses. How do we make this less 90s and more 2010s, right?
Sure.
And then sometimes it's just trying to spin up systems that they need, whether it be applications, working with vendors that they're working with, stuff like that. Just kind of proxying anything related to technology so that a business owner doesn't have to spend too much brain power doing it when they don't really need to, right?
You also do phones.
Yeah.
We do phones. We
Yeah.
do phones.
A lot of phones.
A lot of phones.
Yeah, pretty much anything technology in the workplace, we do it.
Yep.
That's great. I love the for hire concept about this. And I think that's really important for people to kind of understand is if you're a business out there, and a lot of our listeners are small business owners, if you're not a big enough business to have your own in-house IT firm or in-house IT department, this is what makes sense for your business. And that's a great, I love the business model of that because you've got to be a pretty big business to hire out someone who's only doing IT full time, because otherwise it just gets relegated to typically the youngest person in the office.
Yeah.
You're the
How do you do this?
You're the IT guy. And we do something similar on the media side. So we companies who aren't big enough to have their own in-house marketing departments or their in-house social media management, or especially video, photo, you've got to be a pretty big business to afford all of that. So it makes sense for them to come to us and hire us, because they can hire us for whatever they need way cheaper than they can bring in that one employee or certainly that full department. So I always want to speak to that anytime that you guys are on. Like, if you're a small business, look at that. I mean, look at the opportunity that you have for someone who has all of the tools available and can do it for a fraction of the cost of what bringing on a person can. So I want to make sure we got that plug in for you.
The benefit that, I've worked for MSPs for about 8 years, and I worked for really large MSPs that worked with big corporations, and then I've worked with IT enabled, where we're small to mid-sized businesses. The big benefit that I've always seen in working with MSPs is for about the price of a single salary or half a salary, you get a whole team of IT individuals, and that's this whole stack, right? That's the initial IT guy, that's the middle range, that's the senior engineers, and so it is very economical first, which is what most people are thinking about in technology, but then you get a lot of the other benefits that comes with a team of brains.
We're just glad that you like to do that, because we just pick up the phone and call and go, help. I don't know what's happened, but help. And the cool part, y'all do our phones here. And the best part is something will happen to our phones. We don't even know it. And y'all are calling me going, hey, so such and such just happened. And we're like, it did? Okay. And y'all have already fixed it by the time you've called to tell me. That's
how, we kind of pride ourselves on that being our business model, that we want to contact you before you even know there's a problem. So we're constantly monitoring that stuff.
I have this vision of like all these sirens going off.
That's
and you're like, Sue's failing now, and you go over and you're like, oh, the chamber. Okay, let's see what the chamber's
quite literal.
It is literal. Like we started this new thing a couple months ago where we have somebody's on call on the weekends, and we kind of take shifts. And I've got a thing on my phone that literally sets off a siren if there's a high level alert, like if a server goes down. It is an actual siren alert that goes off.
So, I'm glad to know I wasn't far off. I have this these lights going off. Who does the light belong to?
It's true. So tell us about technology in the workplace as of right now. I think people think of IT a lot of times. They think of just computers. Like we just talked about, it's phones. It's basically anything you can plug in a lot of times. So tell us about what that looks like right now in the workplace and kind of what the future of that looks like.
Do you want to go first?
Yeah, I think we're where we've been is a lot of businesses have had on-premise servers, and we're moving out of the age of people hosting their own email servers and on-prem applications, moving to more cloud computing. And that's a lot of what we do, is moving people off of these old servers that have been sitting in the closet for a decade and getting them into the cloud and making things more efficient in that way. Zach, you want to speak to that? Yeah,
we're kind of in the middle of a huge kind of technical revolution, if you will, almost like the Industrial Revolution, where we're shifting off of this old kind of, in the early 2000s, it was all about buying your own equipment, hosting everything, finding someone in your area who can manage all that for a lot of money because they have a ton of expertise, to this other newer model where we're putting our infrastructure in large corporation cloud environments like Amazon, or you pick your brand. But beyond that, we're also seeing kind of the economics of that change a little bit, because we're not just spending a ton of money up front over the course of 5 years. Now we're kind of breaking this out into kind of a Netflix style subscription, right? And so the economics of technology is changing. The way we handle technology, there's a lot of AI coming into play, even with support and tools that we use, that's kind of learning off of behavior, which is very different. And so every day something is changing, and it's pretty
radical. I think one of the big things that we've seen, especially when the pandemic hit, is the portability of the workplace. That just really skyrocketed the progression of what we saw there.
Sure.
Like, I can do things on my phone now that, like, I don't even have to be in the office. I've got my business phone here. I can tap into any server that we manage. Like, I can do it all from my phone.
Isn't that crazy?
It's crazy. And then Elon Musk now has Starlink satellites all over the world. You can be literally anywhere in the world and work. It's crazy.
It's kind of nice, though.
It is.
It is very nice.
So let's talk about AI, because that is a hot topic right now. So how are you seeing AI change things at work?
So for us, I'm actually seeing a lot of our end users start to use it a little bit as kind of a substitutionary tool, which is what it's really good to be right now, right? It's a substitutionary tool. It's functionally taking a lot of data and creating patterns from that data. That's all it's really doing at the moment. And so when you play with these things like ChatGPT and all those, that's what it's doing. It's just ingested all this data, and it's finding a pattern, then spitting it out. It's as confidently wrong as it is confidently right? So, and that's kind of the funny part about it. But what we're seeing is a lot of technology come into place that learns off of behavior, right? And this is really more as we start to deal with security incidents and stuff like this, that if it's not just, we're going to block this person and that's a secure environment. Now it's like, if this behavior happens, then this is going to happen. And so there's a lot more kind of flexibility. And then when it comes to just, even from the non-management side, I'm seeing a lot of, I've got one of my end users who started to use it a lot for just kind of helping formulate documents and policy writing. People don't have to outsource as much policy writing. If it's not, having to be signed off by legal, why would you not use a tool like that helps you kind of formulate something that can be a lot cleaner? And so it's become quite an asset as of late that I've seen.
I use it all the time. Like when I'm writing scripts for executing scripts on computers, like what I used to have to take hours to sit down and figure out, now I can just type it into ChatGPT and say, write me a script for how to do this, and it instantly spits it out. And most of the time it's really close. It's like scary close how good it is.
Yeah.
It saves tons of time.
It's a great tool. So from the technology side, we've started to see a lot of clients now who they're making bigger corporations sweeping rules that are saying, hey, we need policies in place for AI. If you've got sensitive internal stuff, maybe don't copy and paste that into ChatGPT. Are you guys starting to see that from like the security side now?
Yeah, I had a conversation just recently with a client who was kind of asking about this, and I said exactly that. Right, it's great. Don't copy and paste your direct handbook into it and then have it rewrite it. Let it massage some content and then bring it over. It's definitely it's such a new technology. It's so new that regulation follows 5-10 years behind, right? And so there's not a lot of regulation around it. There's not a lot of regulation too much yet around how it's used, how the data is used. And so because of that, it's a public square, right? No different than any social media is. And so we have to definitely treat it as such, where let's not put social numbers in there for sure.
Right.
Maybe don't drop your social security in there and say, hey, fill out this form for me. Right. Might not be a great way to use that. But you talked about security. So tell us a little bit about that. How is security, I'm imagining it being a much bigger part of your business now as that starts to become a crazy world. But how's that unfolding?
Yeah, I mean, security is something that we're kind of gaining traction on every day. And Zach's done a lot of work with there's something called a SIEM, SIEM, and Security Information Event Management. And so we can implement what's called a SIEM, and it's basically ingesting everything from all your applications and looking for threats, right? And actively looking and can respond to those threats. So let's say somebody tries to log into your email account from some other country. the SIM's going to catch that, and depending on how we program it, it can see that and detect that and shut down your account basically to where you can't log in. So we can program to do certain things. So Zach's really worked on that, and we're kind of moving in that direction and offering that as a service to our clients, where we haven't really gone to that level before, but we've seen so many threats and attacks on our clients that it's like, man, we've got to like start monitoring this more closely. I mean,
it's pretty crazy. So, only 7 years ago, 10 years ago, you could just kind of have someone focus on security, and that was it. They were the security person, and that was probably good for an entire, client base. Now it's pretty much every single individual, actually from the end user to an account manager, everybody has to be thinking about security, because I believe it's 87% of the security incidents happen as a result of user error.
Yeah.
But 3% of our technology spend budget in the United States goes to user training.
Yeah.
Right?
True.
So there's a huge massive...
We bring it on ourselves.
That's right.
A little bit.
You can have the greatest security measures in the world, but if Cindy at the front office doesn't know what a phishing attack is.
You opened that email that you shouldn't have opened.
I shut down the entire City of Lufkin accounting department
Oh
years ago.
my goodness.
Because I got an email from the IT director, and it was as real looking as can be. And I opened it, and within seconds, it was like this mass email went out. There's this email, don't touch it. And I was like, Sid, I opened the email because it came from you, and I was trying to be, quick, and I shut down the whole accounting department of the city.
So but it's just growing, and used to it would be just a threat would be kind of a person in their basement who's trying to cause havoc, and now you have entire nation states that work 24/7.
Crazy.
24/7.
And they're using AI now, which is making it even more sophisticated.
And so, as we do our work, not just security work, we have to make sure everything's secure from the ground up. We see incidents all the time. We always have to be thinking about it and making sure customers are thinking about it. No matter how big you are, because a lot of times customers will be like, "Well, I'm only one person," but you're not actually qualified or quantified by the number of employees you have. You're quantified by how much data you have, right? So if you're only one person, but you have 300 accounts, that's 300 accounts that is now valuable. That's an asset, right? Yeah. And so you definitely we have to think about it a lot. It's we're trying to move off of just how do we react to this incident to how do we proactively stop this incident? And it's definitely not when, and if it will happen, it's just when. And so we're having to, it's very, it's a tireless and never ending thing, but it's growing for sure a lot.
Wow.
Yeah, that's awesome. I remember when like the whole NSA thing happened, and they were like, they're listening to our phone calls. And I remember not being super upset about it, because I was like, who's got the time to sit there and listen to every single phone call, that's happening? But now with AI and with artificial intelligence, it's like what it can scan in mass in seconds. It's like, okay, like that makes a little bit more sense now. I can kind of see how that works. I mean, we use it every day in our business to do mass amounts of data. I mean, like just little things, like every video that we do now gets automatically transcribed into text, because then we have software that can scan that text looking for certain things, all the time. It's like now just the world has just gotten so much more accessible with all of these different types of technology. And so it's good to make sure that you're doing it correctly and the security, because every part that makes it good also makes it bad. There's two sides of those great coins. So along that line, what type of tips and tricks or advice do you have for our listeners who are, by and large, small business owners and local to our area? How can you help them become more efficient, more safe? What tips do you have to offer for them?
So I would say first, just have someone who knows this and speaks this that can help advise you, give you guidance, to have a good just stack of applications you're using. There's little things, little movements that just make a huge difference. Using a password manager, stuff like that. Things that, one, save time, and two, just are little bumps in increasing security. Using products like Office 365 or Google Workspace, kind of these enterprise projects that are doing a lot of the work for you, so you don't have to think about these things. It goes miles. And so definitely just having people that can kind of speak into that is pretty vital. And no matter whether you're one person, 200 people, 2,000 people, it's the same conversation goes across the board.
Yeah, I think on the security aspect, I think employee training is a big part of that, and that's something that we've been offering to our clients. Is we've got certain applications and things that we can set our clients up with that take their employees through it. Like I just finished financial institutions now this past year. There's what's called the GLBA Act, and all financial institutions have to meet a certain level of compliance when they're dealing with client data. And so I just did this entire compliancy thing for one of our clients, and starting to take their employees through how do we keep our customer data safe. And so that's a lot of what we're starting to do, is move into compliancy and security in those areas. So.
Yeah. It's not like insurance. I mean, it's like stuff that you think about where it's like, I don't really need it until you need it. Right? Until your entire database of customer information is compromised. And then you're like, oh man, I got to tell every customer I've ever done business with that their information
people don't realize
is
that. You're
one bad incident and you're out of business.
And you think, well, God, it may not happen to me, but then when it does, I mean, that's
there's a lot of regulatory responsibility, and people don't realize you have to notify end customers, and that it just, I believe I read a statistic just the other day that said, I think it's 60% of businesses that get hit with this major incident end up falling under 2 years later. Something pretty outrageous.
Absolutely.
And so
that's huge.
It's pretty important to think about those kind of things before it happens.
Yeah.
We've kind of become desensitized to it, right? You're like, oh, like everybody in the Target's database, their information just got leaked. And it's like, you got to check for $12.36 for the class action lawsuit because there's so many people. When you're a big business and they can absorb that kind of thing. But when you're a small business and that kind of thing happens, like that, it can be detrimental. Like you can close doors over it. We've seen it happen to people in our industry. Just ransomware and I mean, there's so much out there, and it's not the doom and gloom and try to scare you, but I mean, when you're a small business owner and you look at like, oh, okay, well, I need insurance for my building, but they'll be like, okay, but I can neglect the technology side of it, when it may not be the hurricane that's going to be what gets you. So definitely something to look forward to. Guys, anything else that you want to talk about or share with our listeners that we haven't got to chat about today?
Not off the top of my head. I appreciate you guys. This has been awesome. We love working with the chamber. Any opportunity we get. Thank you. We
love sending people y'all's way. You're one of our most referred businesses in town. I mean, it just makes so much sense. I love that model, that business model, where it's just like, hey, it's just black and white numbers. Like, hey, if you're going to pay this much to go do it, just have somebody who specializes in that do it for you. So awesome. Well, we appreciate y'all's time. Thank you so much for supporting the podcast.
Absolutely.
And we love having you guys on. Appreciate your support.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Thank y'all
so much.
Thanks for your continued support.
Absolutely.
Thank you for listening. Please go check out IT Enabled. If you have any needs, reach out to them, contact them. Just help support them for helping to support this podcast and make this possible. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next week.